Finding the perfect roommate can feel impossible. Someone trustworthy, clean, respectful. Someone who pays their bills on time and gives you your space. But what if the person sharing your living space isn't who they claim to be at all? What if the friendly face you see every morning is hiding something so dark, so twisted, that discovering the truth could cost you everything? Tonight, we're exploring 3 absolutely chilling true stories of roommates whose carefully constructed personas crumbled to reveal monsters underneath. These aren't tales of messy dishes or loud music. These are stories of deception, manipulation, and pure terror that unfolded behind closed doors. So lock your bedroom door, check who has access to your spare key, and prepare yourself for 3 stories that will make you question everyone you think you know. Because sometimes the most dangerous stranger is the one sleeping in the room next to yours. Sarah Chin thought she'd hit the roommate jackpot when she met Marcus through a Facebook housing group. He was everything she was looking for: clean, quiet, employed, and most importantly, he could move in immediately to help with her rent in the expensive Portland housing market. Marcus Rodriguez appeared to be the ideal roommate. He was a graphic designer who worked from home, kept common areas spotless, and even brought Sarah coffee some mornings. He was charming, well-dressed, and seemed to have his life together. For the first few months, Sarah felt like she'd found a genuine friend. But Marcus had one quirk that Sarah initially found endearing. He was incredibly interested in her life. He asked detailed questions about her work schedule, her friends, where she went on weekends. He even offered to water her plants when she traveled, insisting he write down her exact itinerary so he could take perfect care of everything. Sarah thought it was sweet. She was so wrong. The first red flag came when Sarah's sister visited unexpectedly. Marcus seemed genuinely panicked that someone was in the apartment, becoming agitated and retreating to his room for the entire weekend. When Sarah asked about it later, Marcus claimed he was just shy around new people. Then Sarah noticed her personal items moving. Nothing dramatic: her hairbrush in a different spot, her jewelry box opened slightly, her laptop moved a few inches on her desk. When she mentioned it, Marcus suggested she was probably just tired from work stress. The truth came out in the most horrifying way possible. Sarah came home early from work one day with a migraine, expecting to rest in her room. As she approached her bedroom door, she heard sounds coming from inside. Not breaking and entering sounds, but familiar sounds. The sound of her own voice. Sarah pressed her ear to the door and heard herself talking. But she wasn't talking. She was standing in the hallway, listening to a recording of herself. When she quietly opened the door, what she found defied comprehension. Marcus was sitting on her bed, wearing her clothes, her favorite sweater, her jeans, even her jewelry. He had styled his hair to match hers and was practicing speaking in her voice while watching videos of her that she'd never seen before. Videos of her sleeping, videos of her changing clothes, videos of her crying after bad days at work. Hours and hours of footage, all taken secretly over months. But the most disturbing discovery was on her desk. A detailed journal written in Marcus's handwriting, but as if he were Sarah. Entries describing his feelings, his thoughts, his plans to slowly replace Sarah's identity entirely. The journal revealed Marcus's complete plan. Learn everything about Sarah's life, practice being her until it was perfect, then eliminate her and assume her identity completely. He had already obtained documents in her name, had been intercepting her mail, and had even contacted her employer claiming to be her, requesting to work remotely. Marcus had been methodically stealing her entire existence, piece by piece. When confronted, Marcus calmly explained that Sarah had such a better life than he did, and he deserved it more. He had been Marcus Rodriguez for 3 months. Before that, he'd been David Kim, and before that, someone else entirely. Police discovered that Marcus Rodriguez didn't exist. The man living in Sarah's apartment was actually Thomas Brennan, a wanted fugitive who had been stealing identities and living as his victims for over 5 years. 2 of his previous roommates had simply vanished. Sarah moved out that same day and hasn't had a roommate since. She still checks over her shoulder, wondering if someone is watching, learning, preparing to become her. 24-year-old Emma Rodriguez was excited to move to Chicago for her first job out of college. When she found a beautiful loft apartment that was slightly out of her budget, the solution seemed perfect: split it with a roommate. That's when she met Daniel. Daniel Kim seemed like the ideal artistic roommate. He was a painter who kept to himself, paid his portion of rent early, and converted the spare room into a beautiful art studio filled with canvases and professional equipment. He was soft-spoken, polite, and seemed to respect Emma's space completely. Emma loved telling friends about her mysterious artist roommate, who created beautiful, haunting paintings. She'd occasionally glimpse his work when his studio door was open dark, emotional pieces that showed real talent. Daniel claimed to be working on a series for a gallery showing, which explained why he was so secretive about his art and why he often painted late into the night. Emma could hear him working, the sound of brushes on canvas, the scraping of palette knives, the occasional frustrated sigh of a perfectionist. For 8 months, they lived together harmoniously. Daniel was the quietest roommate Emma had ever had. Almost too quiet. That should have been a warning sign. The truth began to unravel when Emma's cat went missing. Whiskers was an indoor cat who had never shown any interest in escaping. Emma searched everywhere, posting flyers and checking local shelters. When she asked Daniel if he'd seen anything, he seemed genuinely concerned and even offered to help search the neighborhood. 2 weeks later, Emma's sister visited and commented on Daniel's latest painting, a beautiful, realistic portrait of a cat that looked remarkably like Whiskers. When Emma asked Daniel about it, he claimed it was painted from memory of a cat he'd had as a child. But Emma's sister had taken a photo of the painting, and the resemblance was unmistakable. That night, Emma waited until Daniel left for his part-time job, then picked the lock on his studio door. What she found inside wasn't a gallery-worthy art collection. It was a shrine to death. The paintings weren't abstract art. They were detailed, realistic portraits of dead animals. Cats, dogs, birds, small woodland creatures, all painted with disturbing accuracy and technical skill. But the paintings weren't created from photographs or imagination. In a large freezer in the corner of the room, Emma found the source of Daniel's inspiration. Dozens of small animals, perfectly preserved, positioned as if they were still alive, including Whiskers. The most horrifying discovery was Daniel's meticulously kept journal, documenting each subject, where he'd found them, how long they'd lived, and detailed notes about their final expressions that he wanted to capture and paint. But the journal's final entries weren't about animals anymore. Daniel had been watching Emma, studying her routines, her expressions, her moods. He'd written detailed plans about how to capture what he called her essence before she became his next subject. The final entry, dated just 3 days earlier, simply read, "Emma, Tuesday. Red dress day. Perfect lighting." Tuesday was the next day. Emma was planning to wear her red dress to a work presentation. When Daniel returned from work, Emma was gone. She'd packed everything and left, never to return. Police found Daniel's collection and arrested him, but not before discovering that several missing pet reports in the neighborhood matched animals found in his freezer. Daniel wasn't just practicing on animals. During the investigation, police connected him to 3 missing persons cases in cities where Daniel had previously lived. All young women who had lived alone or with minimal social connections. All women who had been his roommates. Emma still can't look at realistic paintings without feeling sick. She's never lived with a roommate again, and she keeps her new address completely private. Sometimes she wonders if Daniel is still out there, in some other city, being the perfect quiet roommate to another unsuspecting young woman. When the pandemic hit in 2020, 26-year-old Jake Morrison found himself unemployed and struggling to pay rent on his Austin apartment. That's when his college acquaintance Ryan offered to move in and split expenses. Ryan Chun had always been the helpful type, the guy who remembered your birthday, who offered to pick up groceries when you were sick, who genuinely seemed to care about your well-being. During uncertain times, having someone like Ryan around felt like a blessing. Ryan was the perfect pandemic roommate. He maintained social distancing protocols religiously, kept the apartment spotless, and even started cooking elaborate meals for both of them. He seemed to have endless energy for helping Jake with everything from job applications to household repairs. Jake felt incredibly lucky to have such a supportive friend during one of the most stressful periods of his life. But Ryan's helpfulness had a darker purpose that Jake couldn't have imagined. The first sign something was wrong came when Jake started getting sick frequently. Nothing serious, just persistent stomach issues, occasional dizziness, and general fatigue that he attributed to stress and too much takeout food. Ryan was incredibly attentive during Jake's sick days, bringing him homemade soup, encouraging him to rest, and even offering to handle Jake's job interviews via video call when Jake felt too unwell to present himself professionally. It was Ryan's idea for Jake to let him manage Jake's email and social media accounts, arguing that Jake needed to focus on recovering his health. Ryan volunteered to respond to potential employers, maintain Jake's online presence, and even handle his banking so Jake wouldn't have to worry about bills. Jake was so grateful for the help that he didn't question why his job prospects seemed to be getting worse instead of better, or why friends and family members seemed to be contacting him less frequently. The truth came out when Jake's sister showed up unexpectedly, worried because Jake hadn't returned her calls for weeks. Ryan answered the door and calmly explained that Jake was very sick and couldn't have visitors. When Jake's sister insisted on seeing him, Jake appeared, but he looked terrible. He was thin, pale, and seemed confused about basic things like what day it was. Jake's sister immediately demanded to speak with him privately, and that's when the horrifying reality became clear. Ryan had been slowly poisoning Jake with small amounts of prescription sedatives mixed into his food. Not enough to kill him, but enough to keep him docile, confused, and dependent. While Jake was incapacitated, Ryan had been systematically taking over his life. He'd sabotaged Jake's job applications, isolated him from friends and family by responding to messages claiming Jake was too depressed to talk, and had even started the process of assuming control over Jake's financial accounts. Ryan's plan was methodical and long-term. Slowly poison Jake until he was completely dependent, then have him committed to a psychiatric facility for his deteriorating mental health. As Jake's devoted friend and caretaker, Ryan would gain power of attorney and control over Jake's assets and identity. The most chilling discovery was Ryan's detailed timeline, found on his laptop. He had done this before, 3 times. In California, he had been the helpful roommate to Mark, who had died of an apparent overdose after months of declining health. In Nevada, he'd been the caring friend who helped Linda get committed to a psychiatric facility, where she remained, too medicated to explain what had really happened. In Colorado, he'd been the devoted companion who inherited everything when David died in his sleep of natural causes. Each time, Ryan had been the grieving friend who everyone praised for his loyalty and dedication to his troubled roommates. Jake's sister called police immediately. When they arrested Ryan, he calmly explained that he was just trying to help Jake, who was clearly unable to take care of himself. Ryan is now serving life in prison for multiple murders and attempted murders. Jake survived, but the sedatives caused lasting neurological damage. He still struggles with memory issues and has never fully recovered his health. The most disturbing part? Ryan had been planning this since college. He'd maintained casual friendships with dozens of people, waiting for the perfect moment when they'd be vulnerable enough to need a helpful roommate. Jake wasn't randomly targeted. He'd been selected and cultivated as a victim for over 4 years. These 3 stories reveal a terrifying truth about the people we invite into our most private spaces. The roommates who seem too good to be true often are. The ones who are overly helpful, overly interested, or overly perfect might be hiding motives that go far beyond splitting the rent. Marcus, Daniel, and Ryan all understood something crucial about human psychology. We want to trust the people we live with. We want to believe that someone who shares our home, who sees us at our most vulnerable, has our best interests at heart. But predators know this too. They know that the role of roommate provides the perfect cover for their true intentions. It gives them access, trust, and time to study you, to learn your weaknesses, and to slowly implement whatever horrifying plan they have in mind. The next time you're looking for someone to share your space, remember these stories. Do a thorough background check. Trust your instincts if something feels off. And never, ever ignore red flags just because someone is helping with the rent. Because sometimes the person sleeping in the next room isn't just sharing your apartment. They're planning to take your entire life. Sweet dreams, and maybe invest in a good lock for your bedroom door.